Hey everyone, I'm Ellen here at etrailer.com. Today we're taking a look at the LubriMatic SnapLock lever grease gun with angled pipe. And this is going to be a pretty heavy duty grease gun for just about any job that you might have for it, whether that's automotive, maybe you're towing, using an RV or a fifth wheel, or just have a lot of farm equipment around the place and you need to keep everything greased up and lubed so that it can last for a long time. This grease gun is, like I said, going to be a pretty heavy duty one. It does come with the flexible hose and also an angled pipe, so you have kind of two different options as far as the attachment up at the top. It is a top mounted position there, so if we have our flexible hose, we just thread that in, put the coupler on the other end, or same thing with our angled pipe here. I'm just going to use the angled pipe so that it's not quite as unwieldy as that whip hose, since it does kind of whip around. Whenever you attach this, they do suggest that you put the coily end with the spring there towards the coupler, just to help that keep that piece from getting kinked or anything like that. Really, you could put it on either side, it'll fit either way, but that's probably going to be the portion that gets torqued in a weird angle. So once you have that in place, you're able to pump that up, put it on your grease Zerk, and then pump it up full of grease and lube everything up. The cool thing about this is that it does have a easy to use or easy to load cap. In my experience with this, it's not as easy as they advertise. The nice thing is that you don't have to worry about this having a threaded cap, so there's no worries about cross-threading that and then making it kind of useless with some of the other ones you might have out there where the threads are fairly fine and cross-threading can be an issue. With this one, it's kind of a SnapLock design, but there's a lot of tension on this and it is kind of hard, at least for me, to get it undone. And something that I'm not a huge fan of is that this handle has a pretty sharp edge on it, so as you're trying to get your hand in there to turn this and separate it, it's scraping up against this handle and it's not the most awesome thing. So I just have it kind of half in there, but whenever I was first pulling it off, I was having to really crank down on it to turn it to get it to release. You probably have better hand strength than I do. So maybe you won't have an issue with it, but just want to note that for you guys. Inside you'll see our little rubber piece that's going to keep this airtight and push our grease through the cylinder and make sure that there's no air bubbles. To load this, you've got a couple different options. You can either use a canister or a cartridge, or bulk fill it, or use suction to fill it. So depending on which method you're going to use, it kind of determines how you're going to fill that up. So if you've got a tub of grease that you're using, you'll want to put this in there about 2 inches down, pull the plunger all the way out slowly until you get that run all the way back, and then you put it back into the cap, turn it until this little black piece falls into place, and then you would release the rod by pressing on this tab here. That's going to release it, and it does have a pretty good amount of tension, so it will snap back at least whenever it's unloaded. So as you can see there, you might have to help it along once there's grease inside so that it pushes into your cap, and then give it a couple of pumps to make sure that that gets all the way into the coupler. If you're doing a pump mount or a pump fill, you'll want to attach it to this fitting up here at the top and kind of do the same thing where you have except you'll have the plunger all the way in and let that do the work, but then you'll want to make sure that you pump it a few times, get all the grease in there. And then the last way, if you're using a cartridge, something that should look like this, you're going to need a 14-ounce cartridge to fit with this. You'll pull off the cap, pull the rod all the way back again, until it locks into place, and then place the open end into the barrel. As you can see, it has a pretty snug fit in there, but this is why you need to pull it all the way back so that grease can fit all the way down inside there. Then you'd thread it into place, release the rod, push it in place. You want to make sure you pull the cap off of this, or pull that little pull top, or maybe puncture the foil, depending on the type of grease that you have so that it can flow in there. Again, pump it full so that that grease can travel inside there. Now, I'm not going to do all that today because I don't want to get this guy full of grease yet, but just wanted to kind of go over how that's going to work for you. Those 3 different options make it pretty versatile depending on your application. We do have a lot of different grease types available here at etrailer.com, including the bio-based greases. So depending on your application, you can get that grease right here while you're looking at your grease gun. I will say this is a pretty heavy-duty grease gun, so if it's going to be something that you're not using all the time, this might be a little overkill for you. If you just are an RVer and you need to keep things lubed up every once in a while, keep some grease on your 5th wheel or something like that, and you're not going to be using it elsewhere, this might be a little bit more than you need. I'm trying to get this cap back on there, but it does have a pretty good amount of tension. So they say easy cap. I'm not so sure it's that easy. Again, very heavy duty grease gun. I don't think you'll ever need to replace it unless something fails on it, but it should last for a long time. It does have a pretty high output for pressure and for grease. It pushes out about an ounce for every 27 strokes, or about an ounce and a half for every 40 strokes, however you want to look at it. So that's a pretty good amount of grease that it's going to push out there for you. You can either do a full stroke or a smaller stroke if you only have a limited amount of space. Of course, with that smaller stroke, you're not going to get as much grease out of it as you would the full stroke from it there. This can also develop up to 10,000 pounds per square inch or 10,000 psi. So pretty good amount of pressure to get this pushing grease into your bearings, into your fittings on any other equipment. The handle is pretty comfortable. The barrel is pretty comfortable to hold. The only issue I had was just with that edge of that lever being a little bit sharp there. But it does come with a lot of options as far as loading and also actually pumping your items full of grease. If you would like something that's not as big as this, we do have mini grease guns available here at etrailer.com. They just take a little 3-ounce tube of grease, and they might be a little bit more user-friendly for a beginner or more occasional use. As far as the size for this guy, at least with our fixed hose here, or our pipe, it's about 22 inches long, or about 1 foot and 10 inches. If we didn't have that on there, tallest part to the back of the handle, it's about 15.5 inches, so just shy of 1 foot and 4 inches. As far as the width, we'll say about 6 inches wide, maybe a little bit less, about 5.5 inches. The widest portion of the cap there is about 3 inches in diameter. Our handle is about 4.5 inches long, and the overall lever is about 14 inches long. The flexible hose, get this to go all the way to the end. It's about 18 inches, and then our pipe fitting, if we take that coupler off, is about 5.5 inches long. The other thing to know about that coupler, if this happens to get stuck on a grease zerk and you can't get it off, you can just thread this out, and that'll loosen up kind of like a drill bit chuck. It'll release little teeth there, and then you can pull it off a lot easier. But that's going to do it for our look at the LubriMatic SnapLock lever grease gun with angled pipe.